Welcome everyone. It is truly an honor to have you here. I know everyone is very busy and taking time away from your day is important, so I'm glad they're here for this wonderful presentation today. So I'm Mark Kroska from AGC Agency. We're an IT services company, and we've done a series on cyber education for the community for a variety of reasons. I'll get into that. So first of all, I want to say a couple of thanks. First of all, to the Park Event Center for the beautiful space, the beverages and the food, so thank you to them. I think it turned out wonderful. It's a beautiful space, and I think it's working well, so give them a hand. Next up, I want to give a special thanks to Detectvie. We are a partner of theirs, they're a partner of ours. We work closely with them on a number of solutions for IT security. So they helped pay for the event, keep the event free for everyone, kind of a low barrier of entry. The food and beverages kind of know your audience, right? So I know it's kind of a draw. So first of all, do a quick agenda. So I'm going to click on the right thing. All right, so I'm doing my kickoff right now. We'll have Detective Bill speak, and then we'll have Michelle speak. That's our agenda for today. So, for those of you that don't know, I know there's a number of customers here, so again, thank you for being here as customers. For those of you who don't know, AGC is an IT services firm. It's a little bit of an eye chart. We do business IT services. We specialize in infrastructure and cybersecurity. So, today you can't buy anything. We're not selling anything. Put your credit cards or your wallets away. You can't buy anything, right? Doggone it, sorry. It just so happens that we sell cybersecurity solutions. What our hope is that we become the experts that you rely on. You think, you know, I know someone that needs services from IT, and you remember us. That's what I hope for. So again, we're not selling anything, you can't buy anything today, but we are an IT services firm based in St. Cloud. We do serve about the middle third of the state. So up north past Brainerd, down south past Buffalo, that's kind of the middle third that we serve. So here's all the services that we do. Again, it's on our website, just infrastructure, cybersecurity, all kinds of services that businesses need to protect themselves. So again, when you see the need for that, just remember us. All the folks in the blue shirts is our team. Here today, there's a total of 7 of us that work with AGC. So have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to help. So why do we do this? That's probably the bigger question. So let me get this straight. You don't charge for the door. You're giving the food and drinks away. Good presentation. What do you get out of this? Well, first of all, we see no one else is doing this. I don't know if anybody else putting on presentations like, you know, there's a lot of education opportunities out there to help the community as a whole understand what the risks are and what the benefits are of protecting yourself. So there's no one else doing it. There's an endless supply of topics. So we could do this ad nauseum for months and months and months if we wanted to, but we have to make money too, so we got to kind of throttle it a little bit. There's an unmet need in the community. We see attacks happen all the time. We see people that don't know quite who to ask or who to go to. We want to help serve that need. I think that vigilance, which is both awareness and having the right tools and action steps in place helps. So I'm hoping that this helps serve that need. So if you walk out of here with just one takeaway, walk out of here and protect yourself or know someone needs help, that's a win for us. Everybody wins then. Again, we didn't really have to pay for the space, the vendor helped pay for it, so let's use this to our advantage and all get better because of it. Okay, here's the offer. Some of you were at the last event. We had our Iron Street a few months ago. We did an offer where you have a free dark web report. Truly, no obligation whatsoever. If you say, you know, I want to know, am I on the dark web or not? We can do a search for that for free. Just hand somebody a blue shirt, a business card will do that for you. Or 2 months of free phishing training education. So again, no risk, no obligation. We're happy to show it to you. Now, those happen to be services that we sell. I'll admit that, but I'll give away a month or a free test or 2 months of that test for free. So just get a taste of it. There's a benefit to that. So we're happy to talk about it. Anybody in a blue shirt can help answer your questions. Hand us the business card, let us know. We're happy to help. No money today, I promise. And on to our featured presenters. So first of all, Detective Bill. Let's load that presentation and get started. A hush falls over the room. I have a microphone.
I got a hunch he can get away from you real fast, though, if he wants to.
So either arrow keys or
Give him the mic, though.
yeah. I'm going to take the mic away. Position of power. Please welcome him.
Well, thank you for welcoming me here today and allowing me to come and talk to you about cyber crimes.
I'm not used to standing up in front of a crowd with a microphone. I've not been asked to do a presentation to the public before, so bear with me a little bit here. I'm not used to kind of going back and forth with the slides and everything, but make this work. If I can figure out what to click on. All right. So to kind of start off what I'm going to talk about today, here's some statistics from what's called IC3, and that's the Internet Crime Reporting Center. So if you're a victim of crime and you go online to try to figure out who to talk to about that, one of the things you might find is a Federal Bureau of Investigation website called IC3. And you can file a report about kind of what's happened to you. So here's some categories of crimes that have been reported through that system. And this is just for the state of Minnesota from 2022 through 2024. So you can see business email compromise is the first one there. There's been 373 so far this year. Data breaches are the next category. There's been 42. Ransomware, 60. And then phishing, the very last category you can see has spiked this year. And it's at 717, which is far and above the last 2 years. So again, this is kind of a self-reporting system. So by all means, there could be a lot more that are happening in the state. This is just how many people or businesses have gone on here and filed these reports saying they're the victims of one of these events. I'd be concerned looking at this chart. You can see the 717 with the phishing that has jumped so high. Phishing is usually the first step towards one of these crimes. So the offender will try to phish a company, and that's essentially where they reach out, often by email, maybe sometimes by phone, and they're going to pretend to be an employee of business. They're going to say, you know, I can't access my email, my password's not working, help me, you know, gain access to my email account again. And they're hoping to kind of weasel their way in or get a secret or proprietary information from the company. It could be as simple as they're trying to steal a credit card to do some charges or get bank account information for financial information. But a lot of times when we see it, it's them trying to gain access to an account or gain access to the system so they can move on to one of these other types of crimes, the ransomware, the business email compromise. That's where they're going to start making their money. Instead of stealing a credit card and getting $5,000 or $10,000, if they can do the ransomware, the business email compromise, now it's $100,000 to $1 million or more. So that's really a concerning trend with those numbers going up. So kind of what is all this? So the business email compromise that I talked about, like I said, that's often similar to a phishing in which they're going to send an email to the company, and it's going to probably look like it came from somebody you trust, but it's from an offender, and it's going to have an attachment or a link, and it's going to try to get you to click on something or run the attachment. And if that happens, potentially they gain access to your email system, and you're not going to know anything happened. So you're going to get that email, you're going to click on a link or download the document and enter your password to view the document. And it might just not work and disappear, and you might not think anything of it and reply and say, hey, that didn't work, send it again, and kind of move on with your day, but they're already in your system now. And they can lurk in that system for months. So a lot of times when I get a case that involves a compromise like this, I'll reach out to the company and they're going to tell me, our email systems are fine, you know, you're wrong, we don't have an issue. But once we finally get them to have IT start examining things or let us bring a forensics expert in and look through things, they're going to find that there's often rules for the email filtering in place. So it'll set up so if they're going to target a certain vendor or a certain customer of that business and try to get payments sent somewhere else, those emails, the person who owns that account will never see them. They're going to mark them as red, they're going to be deleted, they're going to filter away. So again, that user of that email account doesn't think anything's wrong because they don't see anything suspicious happening. It's all kind of happening in the background. And the typical loss for these, unfortunately, for businesses are often that $10,000 to $1 million or more dollars. And it might not be the business itself that loses the money, because a lot of times, we'll go into it on the next slide, but realtors, other customers of the business are sometimes the ones they target. So they're not going to go after that realtor, they're going to go after the customers where they know those upcoming payments are going to be made, and they're going to step in and start swindling them. So for an example of the business email compromise, this is a realtor case we had recently. Somebody decided, I'm going to buy a bunch of land out in the Dakotas. I really like hunting, so they found the perfect land. It was going to be about $1 million, and they had everything set up. They were going to meet and do the closing and bring a check, but then they got that email about a week before that said, oh, something changed, you need to do this wire transfer. So our victim, they weren't compromised. It was the realtor who had their email system compromised. So the offender was watching the realtor's emails, knew this guy was having a closing in a week, and he was supposed to bring his $1 million check for this payment. So they stepped in with wire transfer instructions, sent an email saying, you know, send the money here and we'll be good to go at closing. So the guy sent the money, came to closing, and they said, what are you talking about? You're supposed to bring the check. And that's when you realize I've been a victim of a scam. Fortunately, in this case, we were able to get a court order to freeze the account where that money went, and then get a court order to seize the funds. The bank which received it didn't allow the person to withdraw those funds. There's a female in California who was trying to go to the bank multiple times to get the funds after they came in, and the bank just held on to them, which is very unusual. Usually the banks, once that money comes in, it goes right out. But fortunately, that money was still there. We got hold of the Secret Service. They went out and interviewed her, and they figured out, which is pretty common, she was a victim of her scam herself. She thought she was in a romantic relationship with a person who worked on an oil rig, and he was starting a business and having some money sent to her, which she was supposed to forward on to somebody else. So in this case and a lot of other cases, the people we identified who are receiving the funds aren't actually involved in the crime knowingly. They're victims of other crimes, and they're kind of caught in the middle. So rarely are criminal charges ever brought on any of these. The IP logs for the emails from the realtor that we went through and everything came back to Nigeria. So a lot of these are outside of the country, and that obviously limits our ability to go after them. So this is an example of a very large purchase where they got in that system and they just watched and waited for that big payday to come along. But other examples of these that we get, sometimes the reoccurring payments. So you have a business that makes, let's say, $70,000 payment every month for materials or for a vendor. They might watch for a while and see that's kind of the biggest money that we can get out of this. So then they'll go in and do the same kind of method to then reroute those payments to themselves. Otherwise, it's the large purchases. We had one business in Wright County who did the quarterly health insurance payments, and it was about $1 million that they would send out each quarter, and one of those got rerouted by wire to the wrong account. So one of the other topics of crime that was on the chart was the ransomware, and this is similar. A lot of times by email, an email will come in and there'll be that link or an attachment or something to download. The email is a lot of times what the criminals really seem to focus a lot of their efforts on, because it's hard to tell exactly who that email is coming from. So I think they get a lot of people that eventually run those attachments or click on those links. But they'll send an email and it's going to have an attachment that's going to allow them to access your system. So if that attachment is run, that link is clicked, potentially they can gain access to your computer, and then depending on how the network is set up, they might be able to go to other computers in the network. And what they're going to do is they're going to keep trying to get on as many computers as they can in that business, and then they're going to encrypt everything. So you're going to get there and you're going to try to use a computer the next day, and it's going to show a screen that says this computer has been encrypted. You have to send us money to have it decrypted. So here's kind of an example of what one of those notices would look like on the computer. And unfortunately, we see at least a couple of these every year. We had one large business or government entity in Wright County who was a victim of this recently, and their IT department could not regain control of that network after it became encrypted. They could only pay or essentially throw away all their computer hard drives and start from fresh. So we got a hold of the FBI out of Minneapolis who came out, and they could say that based on the message and the Bitcoin address that was listed, that it was related to a group out of Romania. But they could help no further than that. Essentially, they said officially we can't give you guidance, but unofficially you have to pay the ransom if you want access to your data again. So this entity did get a hold of a law firm who then negotiated with the payment. And at that point, the law firm kind of kicked us out of the whole deal and said they would handle it. So unfortunately, what happened after that, I don't know. I know they gained access to their computers again, but I don't know what it cost them. So some of the other things that we see, a couple times a year, a business will reach out to us and they'll report that often a former employee who just left, they figured out, has taken trade secrets or data off of their computers. Unfortunately, these are very difficult for us to really do a lot with, because often that employee had access to the data that they took before they left. And the statute's pretty clear on what constitutes a trade secret and what isn't a trade secret. So when I gather that data and go to the prosecutor, if it's not a trade secret or that employee wasn't gaining access to data that they shouldn't have gained access to, we're pretty limited in what we can investigate. But it's kind of highlights the need to make sure employees can only access, I guess, the data they need to access. And if you have an account that the audit trails show or is accessing a very large number of records that normally aren't being accessed, it could be an indicator that something is wrong with that account. Excuse me. So payroll change emails, I bring this up, this was really big in the COVID era and now it's starting to drop off. But for a time there, everybody was working from home. So you'd have HR at home, probably finance at home, everybody's at home, and an email would come in saying, you know, this is so-and-so, I got a new bank, I need to change my direct deposit information. And a lot of times the finance departments of the companies would just go ahead and change and update the information, but they would never call anybody on the phone to verify that it was actually the employee changing their own payroll information. So unfortunately, we had a lot of these where months would go by and somebody would finally call us and say, I just realized all my paychecks have not been coming to me, they've been going somewhere else. And unfortunately those losses, often $5,000 to $10,000, there would be multiple paychecks before they realized there was an issue. And then not exactly a sophisticated thing, but I'll bring it up because this is one of the most common things we see is just kind of a generic theft by swindle, where a business will receive an email from a customer or a phone call, and a lot of times they will say they're a national retailer or some very large company. So in the cases I've had, the businesses have not really done a lot of research to verify they are who they say they are, because if, you know, Best Buy, for example, were to call you up and say, I need to purchase a lot of stuff, you know Best Buy is good for it. So you're not going to necessarily check them maybe. We had a couple businesses that lost millions of dollars in merchandise within 1 to 2 weeks because they thought they were dealing with a major retailer, and that retailer said, you know, we'll send our own trucks, just load them up and we'll agree to these payment terms, and then it never got paid for, and by the time they reached out to the company, they found out none of these people actually worked for them or were affiliated with them. It was just, unfortunately, organized crime that showed up with the semi-trucks and took everything away. On some of those, during COVID, we were able to get phone numbers for the drivers because they would park out in the yard and would get called when it was time to pull up to the building and get the product. And all the phones, unfortunately, were purchased very recently before the pickups, and then they were turned off as soon as the merchandise got picked up, so it couldn't be traced anymore. But even small businesses sometimes are targeted in these. It's not uncommon, especially businesses that deal in metal, to be contacted and told that it's Minneapolis Water or Minneapolis Parks and they need copper downtown, and a driver will just drop the copper down on an alleyway, and that'll be the last they ever see of it. Or other merchandise, you know, lawnmowers, any type of thing where you're being asked to take a credit card over the phone and then somebody's going to show up and pick it up. That's unfortunately very common. And businesses who deal in cash, one of the biggest things we're seeing recently are theft by swindles where somebody will call up, they say they're with finance, and they need the employee with access to the safe to go and get cash and put it in a Bitcoin machine, because unfortunately there's too much money in the cash and it's a violation of company policy and they're going to get fired unless they go make this deposit of money into a Bitcoin ATM. And unfortunately a lot of younger employees seem to fall for that. So kind of where is all this activity coming from right now? Number one by far is the state of Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia, for whatever reason, if I'm working on a case that has a financial aspect to it, as soon as I trace that to Georgia, I know I'm on the right trail because everything centers on Georgia right now. The second kind of big hotspot is California. A lot of the business email compromise seems to be out of China right now. So Chinese nationals will actually fly over, they'll go to California, they'll open a bank account with their passport, and within 30 days of that bank account being opened, which they only put $50 in, it'll be getting $1 million transfers from businesses, and that money, as soon as it hits the bank in California, will go to Hong Kong. And by the time we figure out who those people are that opened the accounts, they're already back across the ocean. The third hotspot is Harris County, Texas. I don't know why that kind of pops up, but that is another area where all this money ends up going. So on my side, what can you do if this kind of happens to you? I can tell you time is of the essence. A lot of businesses, especially larger businesses, will get a hold of their IT department, maybe legal, and they're going to try to compile all the data they think we need before they reach out to us. And that is unfortunately the worst thing that can kind of happen, because for the money, which is unfortunately about the only thing I can do for you, hopefully, is to get your money back, is I only have days to hours of its cryptocurrency. The automated clearinghouse transfers, usually we can kind of capture that money still if it's within days of the crime. For wire transfers, I put some totals on the bottom there. If it's over $25,000 and you contact us within 5 days, we should hopefully be able to pull it back. Or if it's an international wire over $500,000 within 10 days, we can hopefully pull that money back. But once you go past those time windows, our ability to recover anything is pretty sparse. So when it comes to the criminal prosecution or investigation side of things, video footage at a bank or a retailer is often only saved for 30 days. So if you contact us 45, 60 days after the fact, and you have all this information for us, well, the video footage is already gone. So I can trace where that money went, but I'm never going to be able to show on video who took the money. IP data, on the other hand, that can be traced for about a year. So if you contact us within a day or two, and we start working on all that tracing of the money and freezing of accounts and pulling video and everything, 30, 60 days go by and you give us the IP addresses from IT of kind of what happened, that's perfectly fine because I have a year where I can trace those IP addresses. So like I said, I have 30 days for video or just days for freezing accounts to try to seize the money. So that is about all I have in my presentation today. Any questions about any of that? Yes?
From a law enforcement agency standpoint, who is your contact with the local police, sheriffs, like your jurisdiction independent?
If you had to file a report?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say just start with your local police departments. Like I said, you can go online, and a lot of businesses kind of fall into this, is they go online and they think I've lost a lot of money, so I'm not going to go to my little sheriff's office in Wright County, I'm going to go to the FBI. Well, in the FBI, they're going to have you fill out the form online and it goes in a database and probably no one's ever going to look at it. So I would recommend you reach out to your local PD, local sheriff's office, whoever covers your business, and they can do the initial report. And if it's a complex crime that's difficult for them to investigate, they can reach out to the FBI or a state Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to request assistance in the case. But then you know somebody's got it and you can reach out to them and talk to them and make sure it's going to the right place. Yes?
When you talked about that ransomware, I did ask the question one time ago, a long time ago, when we had it happen, but we had a backup, so there's no big deal.
Yep.
Have you ever done like you said, when the lawyers took it over, they can Did you hear anything about, kind of like when somebody did pay that, about like what kind of things you heard? And not to mention, if you do that, don't they have the ability to do it to you?
Yeah, so I can tell you the price that was being asked for was over $1 million in that case. What they ultimately settled on, I don't know, because the attorneys didn't want us to be part of that conversation any further. Obviously, once the system is compromised, there's a number of issues. You don't know maybe how it was compromised in the beginning and how they got in, and while they're in there, what else they did. So that's all outside of my area of expertise. I wouldn't be able to tell you how that happens. If we want on a case like that, we recommend that your IT department or another company gets consulted to do an assessment of the network and what happens. Yes?
As far as international rings go, do any of them get caught, busted, or?
Yeah, from time to time, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, one of the positives of the IC3 system that I mentioned earlier is that database collects and compiles all this data. So the FBI can see who the rings are that are causing the most loss, and they will often open cases and go after that large group. But it's pretty sporadic. So unfortunately, I can tell you on the cases I've worked, for me to get a federal agent involved, I need losses generally of over 10 million, and we don't pass that dollar amount very often. It's not uncommon to have a couple $1 million in loss, but the federal government isn't available for cases like that. So they do go after the rings, but that's a long time out there, and by the time they do that, you're not going to get any of your money back. So, like I said, the best thing I can do is hopefully get your money back, or at least as much of it that's still available. The criminal prosecution, if the FBI does go after that ring in the future, that's great, but it's not going to put money back in your pockets. Yeah?
Do you feel these criminals know their victim? Because a lot of us in here are small business owners. If somebody said, give me $1 million, I'm done. I don't have $1 million. So are they trying to make it only $11,000, figuring out what they can get, or am I immune from those $1 million?
So, like we talked about fish, a lot of this starts with the phishing. And it seems like the days where they would send out just 1 million emails at a time to everyone are kind of over. They will target and do their research on each individual business. So it seems like when they do compromise a system, either through the business email compromise or ransomware, they do have an idea of kind of what your income is as the business. So they are probably going to ask for a somewhat payable sum. It's not going to be something completely off the charts, but it's going to be a lot of money, unfortunately, and they often get paid, it seems like, because what do you do if all your stuff is locked and you don't have backups to roll back to? So it's a very profitable endeavor for them. Yeah?
So what about text messages? Recently I received a pay your toll fee, and for Minnesota, well, I know there's no tolls here, kind of dug into it a little bit, and it had something to do with Florida. I've been to Florida. So I deleted it, blocked it, but everything's connected today. If you're an Apple user, everything's connected today. Connect it over to your computer, connect it over to, does it start there? Can it start there?
I haven't seen that in any of the cases I've worked where a text message was compromised and they were able to go from the phone to the computer. I can't say for certain it's impossible, but that's not something that I've ever seen. Yes?
So, I know I'm not in this one. Curiosity, so on a more individualistic, consumer-based level, what amounts would you say are worth it going towards, or seeking out police involvement? because I saw that it had like for the domestic transfers, like 25,000 and international 500,000. But obviously to some of our like individuals, 18,000 is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are just examples of when, and those numbers specifically come from the FBI for what they call the kill chain, where they can step in and help us stop a wire. But I would say as a person, or even as a business, any loss that happens, you should definitely report. Because there are cases with just a couple $100s that somebody gets swindled out of through a PayPal payment or a Zelle payment, and we're able to get that recovered within hours. So I wouldn't look at it and say, well, I don't think that's valuable enough to report. I would report all of them, and then if it's money we can recover, then we'll count that as a win and we'll get it recovered. Yeah.
So recently, this recently happened down the road from us. We had a customer that had a building, and somebody bought an electric car from looked like a very reputable site, and it was this other guy's address. And the guy came to collect the car, and he's a landscaper. He doesn't have electric cars in the building. And the weird part is, now when you still look, the Speaking website is still open, showing these reputable people that, are the ones that are selling it, and showing a picture of this building where they took a picture of somebody else's electric cars. But how long, like when something like that is figured out, how long does it take them to get those sites down to get them off of there so other people?
Yeah, so is it a domain name like customcars.com or something like that, or is it on? Okay, so they have a domain. So that can vary. It depends on who the domain is registered through. If the company is in the United States or generally a friendly country to us, if I reach out to them, they'll disable the domain for me as soon as I notify them that it's fraud. But depending on if it's a .com or some other dot on the end of that domain name, it could be out of a country that doesn't get along with us so well, so they might ignore me. So unfortunately, it all depends on where the domain is registered through and whether we have jurisdiction to get a court order if necessary to have it closed down, or if they'll, like I said, voluntarily close it down. Unfortunately, in that case, it's very possible the investigator, if it was reported to law enforcement, didn't reach out to them and try to get the domain shut down. Because from my experience, every time I reached out, it's been closed. But if you don't reach out, the register isn't going to know to shut it down.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing would happen because of the fact that the guy that bought the car came out with the trailer to pick it up.
Yeah.
A lot of police with it.
Yeah.
And they said, look at the place, it doesn't even look the same. Yes, it might be that address, but it's not me. And I think probably 4 weeks ago, it was still, the site was still up.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that's a very common scam right now that we're seeing, where people go to buy cars, boats, houses, rent houses online. Everything is online, and it's all fraud. They'll never get a car or a house or a boat delivered. None of it exists.
I had a friend who had a cut flower business, and she had a business Facebook page and Instagram. Somebody took over her Facebook page and was trying to, sell things on there, and she tried, but she couldn't. I think she had different people involved, and Facebook really wasn't cooperating. She got it back on Instagram, but not Facebook. Was that something did you get involved in that?
Potentially we could, yeah. Yeah, if she lost control of her account and you can tell that they're trying to swindle people by getting payments that they're not going to be able to fill, I would say we could get involved and investigate it and notify people at Facebook of what happened. So.
She lost her whole customer base.
Yeah, it's definitely something that could be investigated. And I didn't touch on it during the presentation, but unfortunately, one of the things we run into with a lot of this is difficulties with venue. Obviously, your businesses are located in the state of Minnesota, but oftentimes you don't have a server room necessarily. You're buying computer services from a company that could be in California or Texas, and the person who's committing the crime, they're not in Minnesota either. They're somewhere else in the world, or if they are in the United States, they're Georgia or Texas or wherever else they could be. So when you file that initial report, A lot of times we can start an investigation, but it's going to come to a point where we don't have jurisdiction because the computer that was compromised isn't in Minnesota. The offender who hacked into the computer or stole the money isn't in Minnesota. So I can do as much as I can do here, but then at some point I have to ship this off to Georgia or Texas or somewhere else and ask them to take it over. And unfortunately, that rarely happens. Those other states are going to say, well, why are you sending this to me? You suspect this guy here in Georgia did this, but I don't have a victim. The victim is a server in California and the business owner in Minnesota. So we're not going to investigate this. And unfortunately, a lot of these hit those dead ends. So like I said, I count it as a win if I can get money back. That's what I try to do right away, is at least make it so nobody lost any money. And that's the best we can do under the current circumstances. So, any other questions before I get off the stage? All right. Well, I will be outside for about 10-15 minutes or so at least. So if you do think of another question or have something unrelated to this that you do want to ask, feel free to step out and grab me before I head out. Otherwise, I appreciate you letting me in to talk about cyber crimes with you today. And yeah, I'll be outside for 10-15 minutes. Thank you.
Great presentation, thank you. We'll just take about a 5-minute break or so to refill beverages and food, and then we'll have Michelle set up and start in just a few minutes. We are recording the sessions to put them online for later use. During our first presentation about in August, we had some requests for that, some people that couldn't attend, so we did record these today. We'll put them up online. And also people that attend today get the invitation to the next one. We're kind of planning one in March timeframe, so look forward to that. So next up, we have Michelle Henderson from BadCat Digital. She's going to talk to us about Facebook for Business. So how timely hearing about the Facebook compromise to hear about stuff like that. So please give Michelle a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Mark. And thank you, Carol, for queuing me up so dramatically and well right before the break. So I'm Michelle Henderson, I own BadCat Digital, and we're a digital marketing agency. And I will sell you something today. I have no idea what Mark's problem is. So if you're interested in buying anything, or you have that credit card that he made you put away, I would be happy to talk with you about that. We're going to talk today about some softer cybersecurity things. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, I'm not an IT person, I just play one on TV. No, I'm just kidding. What Detective Kenyon was really talking about was criminal stuff. Crimes that are committed against a business or an individual. This is not doing one, there we go. And this is what we think of when we think of cybercrime, and just any resemblance to any of your sons or boyfriends or something is not intentional, purely coincidental. But this is what we don't talk about when we're talking about cybersecurity. We don't talk about this problem with cybersecurity. This is us. We are the problem with cybersecurity. And when we talk about cybersecurity, the largest gap in any system, any secure system, is the people in it. And so what I see on a daily, weekly, monthly basis as a digital marketing professional with businesses and how they handle their digital assets, I see a huge range of vulnerabilities for softer consequences. So we're maybe talking about, 5 hours out of your week trying to solve a problem because somebody lost a password. Or we're talking about, the $2,000 bill to the IT company because such and such, clicked on something on the email because they didn't get trained in phishing scams or something like that. And there's some really specific things that I see that I want to talk about today. And because we are the owners of businesses and we have the most information about our businesses, we are the biggest target for these criminal things, and so our actions have the biggest impact. Imagine that, the owner's actions having a huge impact on their business. I know it doesn't always feel that way, but it's true. So here's a couple of things to keep in mind. The numbers vary all over the place. 88% though is the closest I could get to. The various AI tools that I looked at all had numbers between 75 and 95%. But 88% of data breaches caused by simple human error. 60% of small businesses go out of business within 6 months of a breach. This is absolutely true. I think this is a statistic from 2021. It may be higher or lower now, but that's out of business after a breach. Phishing through email and social media is a primary attack vector. Social media has anybody gotten the Meta is messaged you this month to tell you that you've been, yeah, blah, blah, blah. That is that same phishing scam. And as an owner, you're most likely to be the most fruitful target. So I'm gonna go over 3 scenarios in rapid fire, and then we'll break them down. Scenario number 1, to save time with your team, let's do this. Let's have some fun. Let's count our vulnerabilities in this scenario. I'm gonna hold my hand up and count them. Ready? To save time with your team, you turn off 2-factor authentication on your Facebook profile, which shares a password with your business bank account. Who's done that? And then you email the password, number 3, to your daughter's roommate to help manage your page. She saves the password in her phone, sets up 2-factor authentication herself, and then loses the phone at a party. And doesn't think to tell you, and now your login no longer works to your Meta account, to your Facebook page, and you don't know how to fix it. Pretty common though, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Here's the second one, let's count them again. You hate all this stuff, web stuff, ugh, that's confusing. So you hired some guy off Craigslist to make you a website 8 years ago, and haven't really thought about it since because it's not like it's e-commerce or anything, right? He set up the email and your business domain is still registered with him. Now you're a manufacturer with $50 million in annual revenue and a stellar reputation, and you didn't know that your top sales rep got 50% of their leads off of your website. And now the guy who built it won't give the domain back. Very common. Number 3, you have absolutely no idea how, but your interior design, Instagram, business engagement is through the roof. Your new social media intern is rocking it, until one day you can no longer log in, and your chief competitor started posting pictures that looked really familiar, like your work. Turns out the intern was using random free AI software to generate social media images and gave the software access to your entire image library. And now you have lost your pages for violating Meta's copyright policies, and a decade of your designs are being copied and reused all over the internet without sourcing you. So let's talk about these one at a time. Okay, back to our social media roommate's daughter party phone loss. So it used to be that as a digital agency, we would onboard a new client, and then the whole hullabaloo about getting access to their Facebook page was a hullabaloo. Like it was like a thing. You had to do like manage users and walk somebody through the whole thing, and they had to give like your personal profile access to their personal profile, and it was a whole thing. And then a couple years ago, Facebook became this company called Meta, and Meta bought Instagram. I think that happened in a different order. And then started Threads, and now there's this thing called Meta Business Accounts. Does everybody know what a Meta Business Account is? I love seeing hands for that, thank you. So Meta Business Accounts are now standing between the Facebook profile, the person who owns the Facebook profile, and the page, the ad account, the Instagram account, all of those things. So this is how the setup should look now. Now, you should have your page, and then you should be able to give access at varying levels to different staff, and you should be able to give third-party vendor access to the business account without ever sharing your personal Facebook profile with anybody, right? That's how it should be set up. Let me tell you what I actually see every week, literally every week. Either a vendor or a former employee actually owns the Meta business account, because the person who set up the profile and thought they had set up the page didn't actually set up the business account. The vendor did, the former employee did, and so now they own the page. There's multiple business accounts under the same profile name. One owns the Facebook page, one owns the Instagram page, and now you can't connect them, meaning if you run ads on one, you can't run ads on the other at the same time. There's a fake profile used to make the business account, which is a huge violation of Facebook's terms, and you probably would have gotten caught 2 years ago, but it's a miracle you haven't been caught yet. You've got a password that's shared between the Facebook profile and something else, typically a bank, which is probably the worst possible thing it could be. And then here's the big one. Employees using personal devices to manage accounts. You asked the question about the phone and the text message. Yeah, so this is why we don't do personal devices managing business assets, right? We don't do it because it does create a window of vulnerability between when your phone is logged into your Gmail, is logged into your Facebook page, is logged into all of those things. The vulnerability isn't the device itself, it's the fact that you're in all of those same accounts, and then that's where that happens. It's not like I put my phone next to my computer and like it infected it, right? So, got that. So these are the most common things I see with specifically Meta, but every social media account has some level of this. Gmail addresses do this, right? There's these business clearinghouses now where you have the opportunity of setting up in a business account so that you can control access from there rather than giving out your password, especially over email. So, action steps. Here's what you can do. These are the things that you should go back to your business and check on and just make sure that you've dotted all of your I's and you've crossed all of your T's, or what's that, dotted your lowercase J's? Yeah. Okay. You can have a vendor audit your setup. We do it all the time. If you don't know if it's set up correctly, let us know. I won't charge you for that. There you go. You should also really be looking at the social media policy in your employee handbook. This is really, really important. A lot of businesses write social media policies only for their employees about, how they handle their personal social media, how they represent the business on their personal social media. But what they don't put in their social media policies is if you have access to the business's social media, here are your responsibilities. You want to talk to any potential vendors, marketing vendors, IT vendors, about offboarding before you actually onboard. Before you give a vendor any money, before you sign the dotted line, you need to understand how they separate later. Every business relationship, we're taught this, every business relationship we should start knowing how it's going to end. Because it will eventually end. It will. Everybody will do their best bets and all of those things, but eventually it'll end. And you need to know how it'll end. So what is their offboarding procedure? What are their password policies like? How do they give their employees access? Are they practicing best practices because your assets are dependent on their policies and how they work with your stuff? Please, please, please take your past employees and your vendors off your pages. Like, really, go check this tonight. You'd be amazed how many people just forget to do this. It's like firing somebody and then not taking the keys back. I don't understand. Like, if we're worried that past employees are going to give us bad reviews on Google, why would we leave them have access to our Facebook page after they left? Password hygiene, which is kind of a gross way to talk about maintaining and updating your passwords well. But utilizing a password manager, not emailing passwords, not sharing passwords between one thing or another. This is what the IT guys are going to tell you to do, but please, please listen. Don't send me your password, I don't want it. I don't want it. And if I ask for it and I need it, I'm going to ask for it over the phone as a person. Or I'm going to ask for it when I'm sitting next to you and I'm typing it in so I'm not writing it down somewhere and throwing it away. Right? You don't want to give me your password that way. And if I ask for it that way, you don't want to do business with me either, by the way. Please don't. Except, yeah, you know what I mean. Utilize access levels appropriately. Detective Kenyon kind of talked about this a little bit. Different tools will have different levels of access. Not everybody needs full access to everything, right? If you have 8 employees that need to manage your social media, and 2 of them create content, and 2 of them post it, and 2 of them do this, and 2 of them do that, then why does the person who create content need access to the ad account? Why does the person who does the ads need access to post the content? They don't. So not everybody needs administrative rights. If you have 2 people with administrative rights, you are this vulnerable. If you have 8 people with administrative rights, you are 4 times more vulnerable because people are the problem, right? And please, please, include social media assets in your HR policies for employee offboarding, whatever that looks like. If you're like a fire him on a Friday, kick him out the door, never talk to him again kind of company, fine. Just make sure that you get them off of your Facebook page before they leave, right? Or, you could be nicer than that too, I'm just saying. Okay, so that was the social media one. Let's talk about the website one. This happens all the time. You would be absolutely amazed. The companies that I've had this conversation with. So, thank you so much for hiring us. We're super excited to get started on your new website. Where's your domain registered? What? What's a domain? Okay. You know that thing at the end of your email that says, at badcatdigital.com? Where do you access that? What? Well, do you have an IT company that does your email? Where's your website hosted? Oh, I have no idea. We did that 6 years ago. I have no idea. Okay, well, we're gonna get started, and this is, building this is gonna take us about 6 weeks. Maybe you could look into that. 6 weeks later. How's that coming along? Still no idea. We can't find it anywhere. That's the conversation. And typically what ends up happening is that company has to go back to their billing from 5 years ago, and I give them a list of the top 5 domain registrars, and I'm like, well, look back in your books for a transaction from GoDaddy in 2017, and then they figure it out. That's how that conversation goes. So here's what I'm saying, please don't do that. This is what you need to have access to own your website. It's 3 things. To own your website, you need 3 things. You need to log in for your domain. Where is it registered? What billing is it under? That's the address that your website's at. You need to log in for that. You need to log in for where your website's hosted. That's the actual physical server that the files live on. It's probably with something like GoDaddy or WP Engine or Amazon Web Services or Network Solutions or whatever, Marco, whatever. Sometimes they're even the same login. Sometimes. That would be nice. And then you need to log in for your website. You need 3 things, and then you own your website. If you don't have all 3 of these things, you don't own your website. Plain and simple. So common website account issues, missing logins, number 1. Another one we see all the time, and this creates vulnerability for a variety of reasons. The website is stuck in some sort of proprietary software platform, meaning you went to a trade show for, who can I pick on? All right, you went to a trade show for logistics companies. And at the trade show, there was a booth, and there was this awesome guy who you really liked and who bought you a drink. And he said, we make websites specifically for logistics companies, and that's all we do. And you're going to pick from one of 3 designs, and you're going to get this website, and you're going to have it forever, and we're going to take care of everything for you. And it's not going to cost you anything up front, but you're going to pay $300 a month from now until infinity, right?
So, you bought me.
Done. What he really means is, we're going to build you this website and you are going to pay us this $300 a month just to keep it out, just to keep it alive. Typical carrying cost for a website might be $300 a year. You're going to pay 12 times that. So if you keep this website for 4 years, you're going to pay about what you would pay if you paid the upfront charge to build your own custom website. If you keep this website for 12 years, you're going to pay 3 times that, and we are going to rake you over the coals. And we're going to make so much money off of you. Please, please, please keep this for 12 years. But because the software is proprietary, they're not going to let you move that website from one hosting platform to another. They're going to do it all, right? Which means you don't own it, because you don't have access to the hosting, so you don't have access to the code base, you don't have access, you don't own the website. They own your website. If they go out of business, your website's done. If you stop paying them, you're done. And the only way for you to get out of that is to pay upfront and double pay and build your own website on the side, and then pray that they don't have some sort of slippery term of agreement in there that it costs $1,000 to transfer the domain to your new site.
Of course.
We see that a lot. Too many users with high-level access. Same issue as the Facebook page. Too many users with administrative access to your website. Former employees, former vendors, the IT company that came in and did an audit, right? Anything like that. Websites are not made of one software. Websites are made of a lot of different softwares, and some of them require additional logins. So you want to look for that. Do you have logins for some sort of extension, modules, plugins, special features? Maybe it's the events calendar, maybe it's the e-commerce function. Something like that will usually have its own software and therefore have its own login. Sometimes that software doesn't have a login because it was free. And if it was free software that's used to make that, it's probably a security problem. So what typically happens with a website, you remember what Detective Kenyon was saying about emails? And you might not notice for months that somebody's in your email. With a website, what happens is you call somebody like me, and I go on Google and I do a search for URLs on your website, and I find the 30 URLs you know about, and then I find 30,000 URLs in Korean about a male enhancement product, and I'm like, did you mean to be selling this as well? And you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, well this company, whatever it is using your domain with these hidden pages to sell their product, and they're running it through your system, and you are now liable for everything that they do on your domain. And you're like, well, how do I get rid of that? I'm like, well, we can get rid of the pages, but they obviously have access to the back end of your website, and I have no idea how. So the real way you get rid of that is just rebuild the whole thing from scratch. And you're like, well, how much is that going to cost me? And I'm like, well, you're my new favorite person. So you don't want to be that person because you weren't planning for that expense, right? So here are the action steps you can take on your website right now. Find all of the logins and store and handle them appropriately. Password hygiene, we already talked about it. Have a website management policy in your employee handbook. Your employees that have access to your website, they need to know what they can and can't do, what they should be able to do, what they shouldn't touch, all of those things, and they shouldn't be managing your website on their personal devices. Not their phone, not their laptop, business devices only. Audit access to all of the web tools and remove software from the websites that's not being actively used. A lot of times, software that's default, that comes along with some package of software, just gets left behind in the website. Developers are notoriously bad at cleaning up after themselves. And it's just about cleaning out underneath the bed, right? So we're going to get rid of anything on the website that's software that's not being used, it's installed, it doesn't have to be there, including, by the way, weird Facebook pixels from 2017 and that separate Google Analytics tracking code that you had before GA4 was installed. And include the website in your HR policies for employee offboarding, meaning if somebody leaves, they need to lose access to your website like right now. If it's an unplanned exit, you obviously need to do it the same day, but if it's a planned exit, you can get rid of their access even before you talk to them. Okay, number 3. This is the one that's I think a little trickier for people to understand. And it's because I think a lot of people have a hard time with artificial intelligence software and AI. And it's super complicated and super technical, and I have none of those things. So I'm going to break it down to make it super, super, super simple. In fact, I have this really easy graph. You ready? Everybody got to sit up because this is really important. That's how AI works. 3 things. Okay, so let's break this down. Who uses ChatGPT? Okay, who actually uses it and won't admit it? There we go. Okay, extra people. Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate that. Okay, so this is how this works. Artificial intelligence software starts with a group of data, a data bank, a data source. In the case of ChatGPT, you basically want to think that every written word that's on the internet is their group of data. I'm not talking like 500 people on a list. That's not what AI uses. AI uses like all the text in the Library of Congress. That's what AI uses, right? Massive, massive data sources, okay? And then what you do as a user is you give AI a question. You say, hey, I got home just like 30 seconds ago and I'm really hungry and I have no idea what to make for dinner, and there's half of a roast pork and some leftover rice, and this is feeling really depressingly real, and some mozzarella cheese in the refrigerator, and I don't know what to do with that. I could just heat it up and eat it like an animal over the sink, or I could type it into ChatGPT and say, can I get a recipe with roast pork and leftover rice, right? Okay. And so it's going to go into that massive bank of information and give me that recipe. Then, it's going to come back with some super bougie grape tomato risotto or something for me, and I'm going to be like, that's too much work and I don't like tomatoes. So my user response is going to be, same thing but with no tomatoes. Now ChatGPT just learned something about me and learned that I don't like tomatoes, or I don't want to keep them in my house, or I don't want them, whatever. For whatever reason, no tomatoes. Now the next time I go to ChatGPT and I say, hey, this time I have leftover chicken and like a bouillon packet in my kitchen, so what can you make for me? It'll give me a recipe, but no tomatoes, right? That's how it learns. So, original data spits out an answer to a question, you give it a question, spits out an answer, learns from whether you like the answer or not, and whether you like the answer or not goes back into the original data bank. That's how it works. So here's why we're talking about this, because you're like, AI and security, why would it matter? It doesn't have anything to do with security, right? I mean, it's browser-based. There's barely a login. I'm not doing anything I shouldn't be doing. Well, you might not be, but your employees might be. And here's why. Nobody knows yet if the images that artificial intelligence gives out are copyright-free or not. Nobody knows yet. It's being adjudicated right now. Generative AI software will work with databanks of images from the Library of Congress, from historical art, from pictures from the New York Times. The New York Times is currently suing ChatGPT for doing just that. So right now, social media platforms, when they sense that you're using, when their algorithms say, hey, that picture was generated by an algorithm, they just shut you down because you violated copyright violations for them. And anybody who's had their Facebook or Instagram page shut down knows there's really not a whole lot you can do to get it back, right? So if your employees are using AI software to generate social media images for you, it's unlikely that they're copyrightable, which means they're violating the copyright of the platform that they're putting them on. In addition to that, free AI software usually has unidentified data sources. Now on the AI software website, it'll tell you right where the data source is. Or it won't, because the software is super sus. My point is that when your employees are using AI software and you didn't pick it for them, they picked it for themselves, you get the liability, and they picked it themselves, right? If we don't have policies around this, they're just gonna do what they're gonna do because that's what people do. It's easier to do my job if I can do this to help me write my emails. So if we don't have any sort of like policy around it, then we're not vetting the software that they're using, and they could be using literally anything. There are thousands of generative AI softwares out there, and a lot of them are really bad. In addition, software will take the data from the device it's using to add to its data bank. Now you usually have to select this or make this, for good software, you select this or you make this part of the process, right? Like, I'm going to use this software and it's going to say, do you want your digital asset management software, your library of images for your business, do you want that included in our generative AI for you? Or do you want it included in your generative AI at all? And you're going to say yes or no. That's good software. Bad software is just going to scrape it from the back end or put it into that terms of service that none of us read at the beginning. You know that one? That's what the bad software is going to do. So now all of a sudden, your client list, your payroll information, your every video you've ever made, every image you've ever done, every word your company has ever written is part of their data bank. And now other places get access to all of that information as well. Now they can't just log into the AI and see the information, but it's all there. Which is a huge problem if you're like in a compliance industry, like let's say you have to be HIPAA compliant, right? And an employee downloads some random software and opens up this door. It creates a liability. So unvetted software and personal accounts for professional use create all kinds of problems for business. So what do? Again, we're going to do all of these best practice stuff. We're going to evaluate our software sources. We're going to have a full AI policy in our employee handbooks that states that any software that's used must be approved and in company-owned accounts on company-owned devices. So you don't have people going off and just using ChatGPT at their desk for non-business purposes, or for using random software that you didn't approve or vet. You never connect AI to any offline data sources, digital asset management software, or client information database, and you really need to talk to an intellectual property attorney about your digital assets, whether you actually own them, the trademark and copyright of your logo, your name mark, all of that stuff. The number of businesses we work with that do not have even their logo trademarked is honestly criminal. You have to get this done, because now your logo, because it's scraped into Google image search, is part of all of these AI softwares, which means that somebody else in another town could ask AI for a logo for a company like yours and just pop up with a very slight variation of what you've got. And it'll just keep happening. So that's really what we're talking about tonight. It's not all about crime. Sometimes vulnerability just shows up in a different way. And sometimes it's just because we didn't want to know, and sometimes it's just because we didn't know. So, any questions? Oh. Larry, you look distressed. Can I help you with something?
Well, you guys are doing a great job of scaring the hell out of me.
Awesome! That's fantastic. See, that's what we were trying to do.
Yes, because now you hear, I've been in different seminars about the importance of AI and how it's going to help you do your emails and sales solicitation, brochures and all this kind of stuff. And I think I have employees that are probably doing that.
Yeah, you do.
I don't have policies on this.
Well, then talk to somebody. Fix it.
I didn't even hear the word AI until maybe a year ago.
Well, then fix it. It's an easy thing to fix. Look, I really do understand what you're saying, but I don't mean to scare anybody. What I'm trying to say is, your employees are doing this, so talk to somebody, get it sorted out. It's a fast, easy fix. They're probably using ChatGPT, which is probably just fine. So unless they're like downloading some random weird stuff off the internet, they're probably doing okay. But that's why AGC is here, because they can check and make sure that it's not a problem. And that's why we're here.
I was just sharing with, what was your name again? Corey. Yeah, I just met Corey. He said a nice job.
Does Corey scare the hell out of me too?
No. Because Corey started with...
Scares the hell out of me.
That's me. Very good.
Well, if I knew that would work, I would have used that on you a long time ago.
Sincerely, like his shoes, it wasn't just a pickup line.
That's how it's right. What I'm talking to you. But what is so interesting is I will be open and honest with a lot of when, as a small business owner, I live in a world of trust. And so I have employees that want to do social media for me. I don't even know. I don't know what their password is. I don't know where my website is. It scares the heck out of me.
Well, just clean up your backyard, Larry.
I'm taking notes left and right, like, oh my gosh, they all gotta be fired.
My whole point is that everybody's really well-intentioned here.
Yeah.
And we can all be well-intentioned and still have vulnerability to us. So it's our responsibility as owners to understand the systems that we're asking people to work in, and then work either with vendors or with ourselves to just kind of tighten up the ship. And the training that you provide, that AGC is offering, that training is absolutely essential to your cyber liability insurance. You have to run those trainings or they might deny your claim. So those things are really important as we move forward. And it's no longer prudent to throw up our hands and say, I don't understand the internet. What's happening with the old internet anyway? Like, we just can't do that anymore. Sorry. I do like your shoes though.
One shoe up here, like, are those great shoes? I didn't know that.
Christmas real rights itself. Website type thing. The gentleman who helped design it, he calls me in the middle of the winter and says, oh yeah, I'm going for a lung transplant, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And I'm like, what? And also I'm like, okay, I've got control and I know how to update it and I have access to network solutions, but I'm dealing with the fact right now, and I think I've talked to Mark a little bit about this.
Cold fusion.
Cold fusion.
Oh no! Oh no!
Yeah, and I'm having a real good time with that.
No, that just needs to be
I got a dollar
redone.
amount, I'm thinking, yeah, right.
Did you have a heart attack? Need the paddles?
No, that just probably needs to be redone.
Well, that's the thing, I mean,
Yeah.
they can say they can update it, but, you know, it's like, no, it keeps crashing.
There's a tipping point with website-based software, with browser-based software, right? Because browsers, the thing that you use, that you click on to go to the internet, the Chrome, the whatever browser, that's software too, and it updates, right? So when you have older legacy systems and languages, they don't update at the same pace always, especially the open source stuff from the 90s. And now all of a sudden you realize that that the whole world has moved on to, to laser printers, and you're still using one of those dot matrix things with the things on the side. And you've got a whole business system, multi-million-dollar business system set up on this dot matrix thing. Yeah, that's actually what the government's figuring out right now with their own system. So yeah. We'll all be paying for that somehow. Yeah.
So there's network solutions and new tech.
Yep.
There's 4 different levels. I've been transferring different things because I know who they all are. But yet, it's like when you're talking to them, it's like these little bits and pieces. Well, we need this. I gave you that already. You've already done that. But it's like, I know, I want to move the whole thing. And so it's like, they don't play nice together.
No, and that's the other thing. They actively point fingers at each other to try and because they don't want to deal with it, right? So they're like, go talk to this person, go talk to this person. And that's where, and honestly, this is not, but that's where your vendor partners become really important. That's where a company like AGC or a company like BadCat, where we'll get on the phone with them and get them to stop doing that. Yeah, well, at this point, you probably will be. I mean, at this point, your turkey's cold fusion, so. Yeah. What else, guys? Anybody else I scared the crap out of? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
I'm scared.
Gretchen, you're scared? Okay, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we hired a lot of younger employees, and so I do notice that there's more interest, there's more using of AI. And I like that they're excited about that, and how we might start to use that. But I do see we have some work to do in terms of policy and talking about especially personal devices.
Yep. And I think what we're running into now is this kind of this generation that's coming into the workforce, and we have that full workforce issue as well, right? Is people who just grew up inside of these systems who don't necessarily see the outside of them. And so, that kind of risk factor of security in those systems, they don't feel that because they've felt safe in them their whole lives, for better or for worse. And so that's where we're coming into it and saying, okay, well, we have to really address this way. I think AI is great. Our team uses it too, and we can really, you can get through some brainstorming stuff faster, you can do this faster, but recognizing that you're never going to get a final product out of AI, right? Because if I can ask you what 2 + 2 is or what the meaning of life is, and you come back to me with literally the same answer, we're not going to use that for our work, right? So.
Comments to what you had said, how you're worried about that. I did that a lot too, where everybody had their own email and their username and password. every time you left, I got stuck with going back to it and monitoring it and switching over it, and I got tired of it, so I went completely generic and removed all the other ones and put them to one basis. He said, here it is, everybody has the same login, you just have to address it to you, and so I only have one place to go look for, and then the rest, any remaining staff takes care of it from there, because I got sick of it.
Well, because now you work with software that it forces a password change to all the people that are using it.
Yeah.
I don't monitor how my employees are changing their passwords for my software. And
So when you're dealing with those passwords and stuff, you need to talk to Mark and the guys about a password management software. Because you set it up for your business, your employees are users of it, not administrators, users of it. The password, the software that you then own will force the change to their password, and you can see all of the passwords as they update them without any work on your part. So that's the kind of stuff that you'll talk to them
do I
about.
have to talk to Mark, or can I talk to my new friend?
You can talk to your new friend over here, yeah. Just anybody in a blue shirt.
It's Mark, but you know.
Yeah. Mark's all over here. I'm not selling you anything, and I'm over here doing all his work for him, so. No. Any other questions, guys? I know we're kind of hitting our limit.
Do you have, like, pages on what you said you were
Yeah, I can share the presentation with Mark and he can send it out to everybody. Like he said, it's videotaped, so videotaped, that really dates me, doesn't it? It's recorded on some sort of like mimeograph machine and will be on that stone tablet website thingy. Yeah. And then if you have any questions, of course, Mark can get you our contact information as well. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so that'll conclude today's presentations. Thank you for coming again today. Again, there is a few more beverages and some food if you haven't already. Stop by the swag table. We're planning another presentation in March, soon to be released details. It'll be another good one, I promise. Look for that. So we'll email everyone that has attended. Thank you, everyone. Please drive carefully.